Hey Canucks fans, and welcome to Clay's Canucks commentary for Tuesday, November the 7th. In a couple of hours, the Canucks will take on the Calgary Flames as they kick off an important four-game road trip. But I'm going to talk about that road trip in a couple of minutes. I want to talk about last night's game first, the 3-2 loss to the Detroit Red Wings. I was there watching the game live at Rogers Arena, and now the Canucks record in games that I'm watching live this season is dropped to 2-2. 6 points in 6 games, the epitome of mediocrity, 500 hockey, and obviously I hope that I see more wins as they go to more games throughout the rest of the season. And make sure you stick around to the end of this video because I'm going to share with you a really funny story that happened to me. I shared it on Twitter last night, but I want to share it as part of this video as well. 3 observations from last night's game. Number 1, Brock Boeser is now a marked man. He had his 4-point outburst, his great 4-point game last week against Pittsburgh, including the hat trick. And now teams, coaches, and players obviously know more about him. They know how talented he is. They know how skilled he is. So they're going to start to strategize and scheme to shut his effectiveness down, to shut him down. So last night you saw Detroit players collapsing into the lane, getting their sixth in the lane, getting their bodies in the way. And Boeser, especially anytime he had the puck in the bottom half of the offensive zone, he didn't get hardly any clear looks at the net. In fact, all his scoring chances yesterday came from weak, either wrist shots or one-timers from way back towards the point. And obviously more difficult for anyone, even Boeser, to score from that far out. So as teams start to know him and strategize and scheme against him, it will be up to Boeser and his line mates and the coaching staff of the Canucks to come up with creative ways to move him around the ice, to get him scoring chances, to get him good looks at the net, and to make sure that he still stays dangerous. Obviously, he's been great. He's our leading scorer for the team so far. It's still relatively early in the season, but this will be something to keep an eye on as we go forward and as he continues to develop as a player. Number 2, the refs last night sucked. And I usually not want to complain about the refereeing. I know it's a tough job, but you could argue that they had a direct hand in two of the Detroit goals, their second and the third goal, by either what they called or what they didn't call. Actually, both of what they didn't call. The second Detroit goal, the one where Chris Tanev inexplicably shot it into his own net. Well, he was aided by the Detroit forward. But on the own goal, Jacob Markstrom could not push off from his left to his right because Henrik Zetterberg's stick was in the way in Jacob Markstrom's pads at the top of the crease. So the Canucks challenged for goalie interference. The challenge was overturned, and lo and behold, Detroit went up 2-0 on that goal. So that was tough to see. Then on the game-winning goal, at first I thought it was really poor defensive coverage, and I thought that Granlund, Dorsett, and Sutter and Hutton were trying to blow the zone too early. And then I watched the replay, and I see that, no, Thomas Tatar, the game-winning goal scorer, actually hooked Hutton down just inside the blue line and turning the puck over. And then now Detroit had a 2-on-1, which they obviously capitalized on. So Hutton looked to the ref and complained after the game. I saw on the highlight both refs had a clear view of the infraction, or the non-infraction apparently. And it's unfortunate that the game had to end like that with a minute and a half left as opposed to getting to overtime. It cost the Canucks at least 1 point, and the refs probably didn't want to call it at that juncture in the game. Kind of wish they did, and so at least it was a more fair game, or at least both teams would have the chance to get those 2 points. But alas, Detroit walks out with that 3-2 victory, and we're all mad at the refs for both of their non-calls on the second and third Detroit goals. Lastly, you're starting to see the line of Dorsett, Sutter, and Granlund regress to the mean a little bit. We knew that Dorsett wasn't going to score 40 goals this year, so it's natural that his goal-scoring pace has slowed down, and that's fine. That's to be expected. But what's not to be expected is our supposed shutdown line is having trouble now shutting teams down. In fact, it was the Horvat, Berchi, Boeser line that did all their damage while shutting down the Crosby line against Pittsburgh on Saturday. But for last night's game, the Sutter, Granlund, and Dorsett line was on the ice for both of Detroit's even strength goals. On the first goal by Helm, they looked really discombobulated, a lot of miscommunication, and unsure of their coverage in the defensive zone. And on the third goal, like I said, it wasn't all their fault that it was aided by the non-call, on the non-hook. But they still, I thought they were blowing the zone a little too early in an attempt to create offense, and maybe weren't as defensively responsible as they should have been. So what's going to happen going forward? It's tough to say. Obviously, they play a very important part on our team, and they are the best checkers of the 4 lines, indeed, that are supposed to be to shut down the other team. And we know that Travis Green loves his matchup. So we'll see what happens going forward. And maybe this is the last couple games have just been a small blip, and they'll get back to being the defensive stalwarts that they can be, at least shutting down the other team's great, stronger forwards, their scoring threat, so to speak. But that line is going to look a little different today because for tonight's game, Marcus Granlund is actually out with an upper body injury suffered on last night's game against Detroit, and Brendan Gaunce draws in. And he draws in his first action of the season after off-season shoulder surgery. And he'll slot in right on that line likely because he can play either the center or the wing, much like Granlund could play center or wing. So look for that line to really be our fourth line of Brandon Sutter between Derek Dorsett and now Brendan Gaunce. Also, they called up Reed Boucher from the minors, so he will be our extra forward tonight, our healthy scratch. And Jacob Markstrom gets a start in net. Anders Nilsson is anticipating, is with his fiancée as they await the birth of their child. Thatcher Demko, is up here from Utica, but it looks like they're going with Markstrom. They are going with Markstrom in net, and we'll see if Demko gets any playing time while he's up here versus another cup of coffee with the team before him going down to Utica. All right, lastly, about this road trip. It's a pretty important road trip. There's only 4 games, but they're all against Pacific Division opponents. We have Calgary tonight, we have Anaheim on Thursday, San Jose on Saturday, and then they wind up their road trip next Tuesday against the Kings, and then they come home and they play against the Vegas Golden Knights next Thursday. So the next 5 games, with the 4 of them being on the road, the next 5 games are against divisional opponents. So it's really make or break time. And really, you hear a lot of people say that American Thanksgiving is a great benchmark to see where a team's going to wind up at the end of the year, missing the playoffs or making the playoffs. And it's not always a perfect science. Obviously, some teams can get hot or some teams can go cold. But in general, it's at least a good indicator of where teams stack up. So after they play these 5 games, it'll be the week before American Thanksgiving. Then they got a couple more games before the 23rd of November, which is Thanksgiving. All my point is that these 5 games will really go set up the Canucks well or not well in their standings, because these 5 teams are the 5 teams they're battling with in the Pacific Division right now. Right now, before tonight's game, LA is the top division with 22 points. Then you have Vegas with 19, and then a logjam at 16 with San Jose, Vancouver, and Calgary. And then you have Anaheim right behind them with 14 points. So those 5 teams, LA, Vegas, San Jose, Calgary, and Anaheim, are the teams that the Canucks are fighting for right now. The only 2 teams they're not playing in the next 2 weeks from their division, Edmonton and Arizona, are actually further behind them in the standings. So you can see how these, you can call them 4-point games, divisional games, whatever you call them, they are very important, and the Canucks can make some really good headway, make some hay in the standings, so to speak, or they could drop a little further. Hopefully they don't. But yeah, we'll check in obviously after a couple weeks, after each game, but we'll check in after a couple weeks and see where they wind up. Lastly, my funny story. I don't think I've had a girl, besides my lovely wife Gail, like me ever in the last 20 years. So you can imagine how shocked I was when yesterday, as I sat in my aisle seat in section 319, and I let these ladies in, she gave me a polite smile and said thank you. I said, you're welcome, and she went to her seat. Then as she's going out to get a drink, she says, I really like your hoodie. I was representing the Van City hoodie. I said, well, thank you. She goes, it's really nice. I said, well, why thank you? My buddy was giving me, a funny look, whatever. And then she went, and then she came back with some drinks, and she actually handed me one. I think it was vodka. Obviously, I don't drink. I don't. You can tell I don't drink because I didn't know what it was. And she goes, here, this is for you. And I said, why, thank you. And then she went to her seat, and then I gave it to my buddy because I don't drink, and he was kind of giggling because he knew that I just drink Pepsi and nothing that's of alcoholic nature. And that was it. It was pretty simple. It was pretty simple, interaction. Those 3 interactions with. I didn't get her name nor her number. That came out the wrong way. I wasn't interested in getting her name nor her number. Happily married man with 3 wonderful kids. But it wasn't lost on me that, and I actually tweeted out how ludicrous it was because I've never had anyone buy me a drink in my life. I don't think I've ever had a girl aside from my wife Gail actually like me. And then here was a stranger buying me a drink at the Canucks game. Maybe she didn't even like me or my face, or she didn't think I was nice. She just liked my hoodie. I don't know. But basically, I tweeted out, I said, I had a complete stranger, a female stranger, buy me a drink at the Canucks game. And I was so shocked and so flattered that I forgot that I don't even drink. So that was my excitement for the game, a little side thing that kept me entertained while we were watching the Canucks and the Red Wings battle it out. Okay, this is a long one. This is almost 10 minutes, kind of rambled a little bit, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see what Calgary does. I'm excited to see what Vancouver does to Calgary as they start off this 4-game road trip. Canucks fans would love to hear what you think. What do you think of the Brock Besser thing? What do you think of the refs? What do you think of Dorsett, Granlund, and Sutter, and now Brendan Gaunce? How do you think the Canucks are going to do on this road trip? How many points out of 8 do you think they'll get? And when they come back from this road trip, where are they going to be in the standings? Battling around the playoff bar, way above it, or hopefully not but maybe they'll be below it. Leave your comments below. I'd love to read them. I'll certainly respond. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, I invite you to do so now. All right, this past 10 minutes, appreciate you watching, appreciate you sticking with me. Go Canucks go, God bless, and I hope they win tonight. Man, I messed that up. God bless, and go Canucks go.